In the bottom right of Dragon Scales, it is the orange Protoss trigger. The top left, we have DisK. Definitely not both the same team. I don't know what DisK's team is, though. APPR. The trigger is on Basilisk. DisK APPR. It would be wonderful to be a cat. That's why there's a whole song about it. Have I played any StarCraft tournaments? No? I don't, I mean, technically, I played, in a gold level tournament back in 2010. Does that count? I did play in a couple of clan wars in like 2011, 2012, actually. So if that counts as well, but usually people don't count those. Playing in clan wars was a lot of fun, but I don't even know if they really exist so much anymore. It requires so much work on the side of the organizers. For it is often, little reward. You might be able to broadcast the games, I guess, but no one really watches them, and then usually just are yelled at by everyone for doing something incorrect, because you're one person doing 50 different things. Anyways, fortunately, we have admins in this Open Cup, and people actually do want to watch these players play, because they're actually pretty good. And we have two North Americans making it this far in the European Open Cup. They're at the quarterfinal. They are looking to get to the semifinal to face either Hero Marine or Spirit. Not sure at all who's going to win that TVT. I actually would not have minded at all to do the TVT, but I just didn't know if it was already underway and how long a TVT can last, I don't want to wait. So anyways, the PvP should be fun, and it is going to be action-packed because DisK is going for a low ground expand on Dragon Scales, which is very possible. Our Trigger said, nah, not about that life. Gonna go for Proxy Robo. He is going to try and cheese out DisK's attempted expand, attempted greed, and DisK is trying to figure out exactly how he's about to be cheesed. Because he knows, no Nexus, missing Pylon, but he just doesn't know exactly what it is. So sending out a probe to the right, sending out a stalker to the left. He does have 2 gateways worth of production, so it wasn't a 1-gate low ground expanse, which makes it a little bit safer. But it's still going to be very difficult to actually hold. Shield battery is nice and far back, but that is a lone pylon so far, so I'm still a little worried. Adept's going to get in. That's already a bummer. I guess it wouldn't get far enough in to actually be a nuisance. The probe got in, though. I was worried more about the scouting, knowing exactly what DisK is going for defense-wise. Well, the probe actually did it, so the adept didn't have to. One adept, obviously not a threat to the probes. Not really. If it does get into the main, I do think, you got to chase it down, though. So this trigger does finally do that. That opens up the natural a little bit. He goes right for that shield battery. But that Immortal is all kind of stuck. Well, almost stuck. Probe's coming after it. Probe's coming after it. Yeah! And now it is 2 Stalkers versus 3, and a couple of probes are going to make up for that difference. Warp Gate is finished, finally. Ooh. This actually saved that Stalker. And we are going to get another Warp in. Is that going to save the day? Trigger Warp Prism also floating in, a little haphazardly. The shield battery's on the way. Probably, I want to go ahead and make another pylon and another shield battery. So 2 shield batteries, another pylon. I don't know, I think Trigger was overly ambitious with that Immortal. If the shield battery was any closer to the wall, the Immortal's not in as much trouble as it was. But it being partially blocked by that one building stalker and then having had to go so deep into the, I don't know. Okay, kind of a cool idea with the recall. Doesn't manage to save one of the units that were force fielded off. Now recall that this is DisK's gateway production, guys. 2 gateways, 7X core. All vulnerable to this attack. DisK has a Robo building his own Immortal and is trying to get there. Not able to slice off any units of his opponent with his force field is a bit of a bummer. Here's Immortal number 1. The DisK has run out of warp-ins for sentries and stalkers at this point. 7X core is dead. Gateways are dead. And while the 7X core is being rebuilt, that is a long time not to have additional gateway production. You definitely start the Immortal, that takes up your bank. Okay, great, but then you're gonna start accruing more bank. Oh, decent force fields here. Actually, really great force fields. So the Warp Prism picks up that Immortal. What was really important was that the one Immortal was left by itself, and these other units could not attack. That's why the Force Fields were so surprisingly good. This is becoming much more difficult for DisK to hold. Does he have an overcharge? Does he have an overcharge? Whoo! A little late on overcharge. A little worrying right there. He's going to try and stand his ground, but the overcharged shield battery is off to the right, so it's not helping these other units. And of course, no more warpings. DisK also having the Adept in the main. Initially, they were not targeting the probes. DisK made a choice. He had to make a choice. He chose to try and hold on to the front lines, but either way you slice it, he's going to be pretty much dead. GG. In the bottom left, Proxy roboing his way to victory. It is Basilisk's Trigger. In the top right, we have APPR DisK. I don't know what that is. I'm gonna try and look it up real quick. Apprentice Esports. There you go. Nice. So DisK tried to go for the low ground expands and found it to be quite troublesome. What could he have done better? Actually hard to say. The shield battery so far back did, I think, help him capture his opponent's Immortal faster. I thought that was a solid start, but then... I don't know. Not rebuilding his cybernetics core and gateways faster? Not, He did, you know, that force field, that forcing the recall is also kind of painful. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of a lot of different things happening a little bit better for DisK. Because it is possible to hold in that position. It happens all the time, but it is a very delicate balance. Every little tiny screw-up hurts a lot. We're an Ancient Cistern now, though, and there are no ramps in the natural. So no one's going to be tempted to go for a low ground expand. And now we just wait to see if someone does not place their pylon in the main. Trigger has been apparently a fan of not probe scouting in PvP for a while. He once again does not do it. I mean, you save a bit of money. You keep your probe mining at home. But that is a significant lack of information, because it's not even just about the first pylon. I mean, this probe can stay around and, of course, see what units pop out from the gateways, too. And if someone did want to go for a one-base Stargate for whatever reason, or one-base Twilight Count, I mean, the probe might even be able to see that long if it stays around long enough. It can dip out and then hide and then come back in. That's happened before, too. I mean, most players consider the Probe Scout to be pretty instrumental to PvP. And if they do skip the Probe Scout, it is only every once in a while to keep things different and fresh, and so your opponent can never really know exactly what you're going to do. So they start thinking, oh, he always doesn't scout, and I'm going to abuse that in some way. And then boom, Trigger starts scouting, and you're like, oh, no. But no, Trigger is just not doing any scouting with the probe. He is still going into a sentry if he's going to expand, I guess, the important thing. And the probe of DisK did see the sentry, knew the hallucination was going to be on the way, and also with that sentry scout from DisK's probe, kind of also knew that it was going to be a macro game. I'm sure there are trick builds where you open Stalker Sentry and then you go into something aggressive in PvP, but it's pretty rare. So Trigger, only just now with his hallucination, is able to see that his opponent was expanding. Like, that's the first time he even knew that his opponent wasn't being aggressive. Which is fortunate, but DisK, perhaps with some more confident chrono boosts, it's actually ahead a few probes. So if Trigger was hoping to get ahead by being greedy, it didn't really work. And he does kind of cut into his own greediness to a certain extent when he has to build a shield battery. You know, ideally, if you knew for a fact everything your opponent was doing and it all lined up to be a macro game, you wouldn't get any shield batteries, right? Not until you're on your third, perhaps. So that, you know, that's something that DisK didn't have to worry about, you know. But, I mean, he still got a shield battery. I think it was a later one, though. I think. But anyways, it's whatever happened, he's actually still ahead 3 probes. And his robo is already coming down, so... Trigger just sent out a bunch of scouting units. He didn't find anything, but he did, I think, intercept the hallucination. He is moving out as he takes his 3rd base. DisK has the same exact number of units, but is a little bit later to that 3rd base, as he got that robo first. So the robo first is usually just a very safe maneuver. Might have been suspicious of Trigger doing a Dark Shrine build based off of something. He saw all the pylons of his opponent. I don't know, based off of something, but the Observer comes out first, and now the Immortal's coming out, and obviously that robo is going to give you Immortals, should you choose to invest into them. Link up from Trigger is going to find some damage. Get punished a little bit, however. Oh, that was awkward. But he also got that 3rd Nexus canceled. Wasn't very far along, but that's actually more of a problem. DisK just didn't have a very far along Nexus that he could let take a couple of shots of damage, so he could get in position to save it. It was already late. It was going to be low health, and it was going to be canceled. And DisK is now basically a full Nexus behind his opponent. That does sound pretty devastating, but it does still come down to, you know, sometimes whether someone feels like they can produce 3 probes at a time, they can actually saturate, and well, Trigger is. So, 100% DisK just falls behind. Falls behind in probe count, falls behind in correct saturation as well. You can see the numbers on this overlay, because this overlay is so much better. There's no ambiguous green arrows, is there? But yeah. This bodes well for Trigger. DisK manages to get a faster Forge, and he's got an Immortal, but especially as the game goes on, I feel like the Immortal has less to say in the game. And Trigger's also going to grab his own. I mean, we do know that there are 3 base pushes that include 2 or even maybe 3 Immortals, I think. And yeah, they could pack a wallop, for sure. But I know that there are even some Protoss players out there who are straight up saying, like, I don't actually know why people get Immortals. And I believe Showtime said that in the lesson I took with him. It's like, I don't really understand it, unless you're in trouble. Which neither of these players, I think, were totally in trouble. But nonetheless, still going to invest into 2 Immortals, charge, +2 attack off of a building 4th base. Seems to be the way that things are going. Maybe one of them will decide to go into faster disruptors. Lots of blinking around here, not finding much success for DisK, who is at least keeping tabs on his opponent, whereas Trigger is totally fine being defensive. Doesn't even take damage from the Adepts. Holds on to his economy lead with a faster 4th Nexus. I think he had to pull probes or something. Because weirdly enough, he's now slightly behind in the economy. Like, how does that happen? I guess DisK just had... I'm actually really confused. So he mines out the main faster, so he can transfer his probes faster. So he has to build as many probes to saturate, but that's not really been a problem. I don't know. I don't know. DisK somehow, though, is actually making more money. Will definitely change once Trigger's 4th base is done and probes are on it. That much I know. Can't explain it right now. I guess the other thing is that if you do oversaturate a base, you do get more money. It's just that the actual investment return it gets worse and worse, like dramatically worse after the perfect saturation of 16 out of 16. So I guess DisK being 22 out of 16 was making him more money. Even though he was on a lower number of probes. I don't know. Anyways. One person does go into Robotics Bay, and that is DisK. DisK is the person to go into Robo Bay. He's got 3 Immortals, chronoing is +2, currently only 1 Robo. There's a second one. Still no 4th base, and certainly if you are going to go into the Disruptors, into that higher technology, you're going to be probably a little more conservative on your expansions, as it's the guy who has that faster 4th base, who's not investing into higher technology, who's using all of that to instead invest into a bunch of army that's probably going to have the mobility. Now DisK, with a quick reaction, does get some nasty force fields off to the right, and I think is going to be okay here. I mean, he's still got 3 Immortals, fully healthy. He's taking out his opponent's Immortals, and he's even going to go on the chase Trigger, thinking that he had a moment to just dive up on this high ground through this very precarious ramp and choke, was, I guess, appropriately punished for it. DisK was on top of it. And I'm surprised that Trigger is still being as aggressive as he is. Very dangerous thing to do. Blink forward from DisK is warranted. Grabs the Warp Prism as well. And again, 3 Immortals. Still the backbone of DisK's army. Now, sometimes that involved in the fight because they got little crab walkie things going on here. They can't blink. And, I mean, their range isn't that impressive, I suppose. But when they are involved, they do take down Trigger's mass pure Blinkstalker army very well. Trigger actually did not get charged at all, particularly fast, compared to DisK. And charge lots would be what really helped against the Immortals. But the problem with charge lots is that once you get to these sizes of Blinkstalker armies, is that you warp in, let's say, 10 Zealots, usually a decent amount. They actually just get out-microed. They go down before they really are starting to be effective. So you'd want to have 20 Zealots, but then that's 2 warp-ins and 2,000 minerals, so that's kind of a big investment. And they could still be out-microed. If they take a bad fight, if they don't get us around. So, you know, you kind of don't want to. And then as disruptors get added in, there's a chance that they all just swarm on it and then go kaplooey. I suppose the stalkers that have the mobility. So yeah, Trigger's going to go pure stalker. He's going to have some mobility. He's going to have a lot of micro. And that absolutely can be better than what DisK has. But DisK has a standing army. If it stands its ground and fights and everything is involved in the fight, it's supposed to win. That's what Trigger has to make sure doesn't happen. He has to try and get DisK to be distracted, to try and split his army incorrectly as harassment starts to build up here. DisK is going ahead and taking this engagement, knowing that, again, face-to-face his army is better, but the Zealots have caused some damage. Not yet enough static defense to just easy-peasy take care of these things, but DisK, as he does max out, will be able to afford it. Trigger has been mining much more for an extended period of time. 4th base got saturated. 5th base... Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 6th base. This base also getting saturated, and this base is now on the way. So DisK, but he can be very comfortable in 4 bases. He can take really cost-efficient engagements if played correctly, and he might still be able to win. And when he does feel comfortable enough to move out, he will put Trigger into a box that he can't get out of. We'll just keep on firing disruptor balls. And when Trigger doesn't have any more room to back away, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. It's a pretty fun PvP, though. I mean, I do enjoy when one person decides to go basically mass gateway and the other person goes for disruptors. I think it's a fun way to play. 2 disruptors get taken out. No, 3 actually get taken out. DisK didn't have that many to begin with. Now, that did cost Trigger quite a few stalkers, but as he is the one that has the extra cash, he is willing to make those trades, especially if it happens to lead into a snowball. DisK forced to recall a decent chunk of stalkers to deal with the harassment off to the right, probably just encouraged Trigger to make sure to go over to the left once again, but 3 Immortals still involved with the shield body overcharge are really, really helpful right now, as the numbers of everything else were getting a little bit low. Warp Prism on the right side was sniped by DisK, I believe, at the last seconds, but Trigger can still send Zealots from his own base. That's no problem, and he is just hitting left, right, left, right, left, right. And Trigger is having a little bit of a difficult time, but is still taking, I think, those more cost-efficient trades. Not by too much, but by a little. Oh, that was a way overextension from Trigger. That was awkward. I think he was thinking about a surround, but that didn't really work out. And yeah, he can still hope that the further trades will still go very well for him. He's also actually built up quite the Zealot count, so again, the numbers basically are the main issue here. Do you have enough Zealots to just get that wraparound? Or do the Stalkers get to micro against them for 20 seconds and then they win that battle? If there's 50 Zealots, like, the Stalkers are going to have trouble. No doubt about it. But 20, 10, sure, that's not too big a deal. Another snipe with a Warp Prism. DisK actually being quite courageous. That was a pretty good building army with the Archons now involved. Remember, they can tank a couple of the disruptor shots. Not to mention take out the Zealots of DisK, which had just gone over, were suddenly in bigger numbers. Now they're completely gone. Disruptor number, though, at 7 looks quite impressive. The shield body overcharge popped on the right side. Left side also an engagement was happening, but it looks like the Immortals did their job with a little bit of the help from the shield battery. 1 Immortal lost its life, but for the cause. And DisK is still holding, man. He's now actually up 30 army supplies, so it's not even just the army type that's working out for him very well. It's the actual army size. Trigger has been on a higher probe count for the last, like, 4 minutes. And 17 probes higher, he is digging into his own army supply. Perhaps, had he not gone for that, he would have had enough to kind of push over some of these snowballs, these would-be snowballs, but then he wouldn't have enough economy to replace it if it didn't work out. So that's always the conundrum. On Trigger's side, a couple of disruptors getting picked apart. DisK did not throw more than one out at a time, ended up actually costing him 4 disruptors. That is one of the last disruptor shots from DisK, but it's going to get connected. This base is going to go down. Now, DisK also having some trouble back at home, losing a lot of probes, trying to warp in to save the day, but the shield battery is going to be target fire. Those are DTs. But the observer's there. Trigger actually already anticipating this problem. Looks to also save this this base at the very least. This one did go down. So Trigger still on 5 bases, 74 probes. DisK looking to save his 4th, trying to get his 5th, but only on 46 probes. And more importantly, I would say the most important, just trying to keep this position. He knows if he keeps this position with disruptors, oh Lord baby Jesus, then he will be in a good place. But the disruptor numbers are getting lower, they're getting sniped, they're running out of ammo, and Trigger is the one that can still reinforce fast. He's gonna pull the probes, figuring that might do the trick. Target fires the Immortals. Warp Prism of Trigger, not gonna get target fired this time around. Seems a little redundant as he is the defensive player, but if he does find a moment to counterattack, having that Warp Prism still in play can be beautiful. And Trigger has managed to push back, even up the army supply. DisK not willing to let this position go, goes back in, witnesses the army is no longer there, knows a base trade, must know a base trade is about to happen. So that's the time we put your disruptors in some of the sneaky spots. Warp Prism gets taken down, Archons try to get recall, but they are also going to go down. So Trigger actually losing a couple very expensive, very important units in this potential base trade. DisK did finally lose his 4th base, just nothing more could be reinforced. The 5th base is found, that was about to be sneaky. That is found, and all those probes are going to die. It is full-on base trade time. DisK with 3 disruptors on the offense, a couple of disruptors building on the defense. Trigger must know that that is a problem. So his priority is to watch his army like a hawk. But as he goes and takes care of the 5th base, he figures there's probably not going to be any disruptors there. He's right about that. That'll go down. His production, though, his technology, is being taken out. And while it's not like 100% dead like it would be for a Terran if this happens. Obviously, for a Protoss, losing this production is also pretty terrifying. Killing all the production, all the technology, that is, I would say, 80% of the time going to be a stake in the heart of the Protoss player, right? Unless they have so much of a bank that they can immediately rebuild the gateways, preempting the base trade, and then it could be a little bit different. But that was not the case here. Both of them staying on a relatively low bank as they were just constantly colliding between each other's armies. Looks like the DTs are trying to save the disruptors' lives. Actually, I think a couple of disruptors did. Oh, no, there they are. I was going to say 8 disruptors seems like a good number to me. So Trigger's Zealots were not able to find the disruptors before they were defended. And plus, they probably could have defended themselves. There are 5 disruptors back on DisK's main base. So he has kept his production alive. Now, his economy is shit. It's nothing. It's basically non-existent. But this kind of goes more into, I think, the fact that just, you know, DisK having his production maybe doesn't actually matter. Like, it's not even important to even mention that. Him having buildings is important. There's no base race. But the point is, he has taken out Trigger's ability to reproduce, or at least had. A couple of gateways were added in on the right side as Trigger had just taken so much of the map. He was so expansive. DisK could only kill so many bases so fast. And while his defensive disruptors initially were fantastic, right, in case the base trade got real sloppy, and Trigger ran into them, now there's just 5 disruptors back at home that aren't really helping. And as they make the trek across the map, they got to be real wary of not being caught by a couple of zealots, being caught by the army. Vision on the map limited for both players. DisK could try and set up a trap, but he doesn't know exactly where Trigger's moving out. Trigger has to be wary of a trap. He knows that Disruptor's going to be trying to shoot him down. 1 Disruptor killed. That one's not going to connect. Zealots hitting the natural base. Again, Observer is over them, but they are clicking on the Nexus, so the DTs might be able to save it. DisK certainly needs as many Nexus as he can get if he ever plans on playing this game out, but I'm not sure that he can. Trigger is just trying to buy time right now. It's not necessarily that he can actually win these engagements while he's moving out. I think he knows that it's a good enough army to combat a little, but it means that DisK isn't going to his bases, not interrupting his income, not interrupting his production. And that's really important. So Trigger, maybe he takes a couple of Zealot losses as he runs away, might be able to replace those Zealots with a couple of Archons, a couple of Stalkers, as he does have his Cybernetics Core rebuilt, which would be a little more important anyways. That would be ideal. But DisK does finally make his way over to that very important base of Trigger that's got the gateways, it's got some mining left over, the Disruptors, basically just zoning. That is enough Disruptors that they can zone. Now, they still gotta be a little careful. Those Zealots wrap around some of the Disruptors, the Stalkers get a concave, the Disruptors can't take care of everything by themselves. This is a very risky move by Trigger. I wanted to set up a bit of a sandwich, I think, but kind of just got caught there. Just preempting it, seeing it coming. Oh, loses an Observer. He does still have access to his Robos, and he knows the importance of Observers. There are no Dark Shrine, there's no Dark Templars for Trigger, but he needs the vision on the map. You can't just let Trigger put an Observer over his army, right? That would be terrible. But Trigger is starting to lose, I think, too many units. And constantly trying to get DisK to disengage from his bases, from his economy. I think he's lost too many of these battles. DisK now at 30 army supply above. Equal upgrades, but then DisK has, I think, more Stalkers and, of course, the Disruptor shots, which are being sent out. They're a little haphazard. The Zealots are really causing some issues, but the amount of Stalkers that DisK has left over, 30 to 10, I think DisK is going to be all right here. One Archon is not going to make the difference. As it goes down, I think Trigger just could not buy enough time, could not buy enough reinforcements, and then just taking some of these really bad engagements, you know? Posturing, puffing up your feathers, keeping DisK away from your production line. I do think that was really important. And I think DisK could have been in trouble. You know, if Trigger really played that perfectly and was able to escape all these battles with only a couple of Zealot losses, but 2 or 3 of them actually ended up being really bad. And DisK is going to take the base trade in game number 2. GG. Which North American will continue? In the top left, we have Basilisk's Trigger. In the bottom right, it is DisK. Looks like a Laser Clem is starting up as the first semifinals, and unfortunately, none of the English broadcasters are going to be in that. But that should be a fun TVZ. And then we have Spirits actually taking out Tier Marine 2-0 even. Spirits really playing quite well. So that means the winner of this will go on to the semifinals to face Spirit in a guaranteed PvT. Good luck to whoever it is, because Spirit really is playing some damn fine StarCraft lately. But first, we have to figure out which North American is going to be. Who will continue to carry the Canadian flag over to the semifinals of Europe? Good old Canada. Trigger showing more aggression, not just in his Robo Cheese in the first game against DisK's attempted Nexus expands, but also in game number 2. Well, the game obviously went to 3 bases without much hiccup, went to 4 bases with a little bit of this and that. It was on 4 bases that we really got a lot of aggression going. So, you know, like, how can one player be blamed for being more aggressive? Well, stylistically, Trigger was playing a mass gateway style with a lot of expansions behind it. So yeah, very macro. But he had to, with that style of play, had to be constantly aggressive. He had to constantly be on DisK's side of the map, lest he had the problem, which he eventually did, which is that he gets pinned up against his own base without enough room to get a concave, to get a micro battle really going. And that's something that DisK knew he had to take advantage of. So that's why he stuck there for so long, and we had the base trade, because Trigger can't really do anything besides base trade, try and get out of that position. So yeah, Trigger was the more aggressive one. DisK chose a kind of safer, almost calmer option of getting a slower 3rd, actually, but then slower 4th, while getting up to that higher technology. And it could have gone poorly for him. Trigger, you know, was definitely finding potential in some places. Not enough that, again, I'll ever say that Trigger threw. I don't think he was that far ahead. To say he was ahead, actually, might not even be true either. In control of the game, maybe. So in a certain sense ahead, but it's certainly not a point where I was like, you know, DisK is in real trouble right now. DisK actually handled a lot of the big problems quite well. The big attack on his right side that could have easily been misidentified as a small attack, so he didn't recall his Stalkers, he didn't have enough units over there, right? So DisK played very well defensively, Trigger played well aggressively, and the base trade can sometimes just be who takes a calmer approach to things. And they both, I think, played it out as intelligently as they could in their positions, but then Trigger did start to be, perhaps, overly confident Maybe he should have postured around his own bases instead of trying to catch DisK off guard. But of course, he probably thought that he had to. He probably thought that I need to catch this guy off guard. I need to get some type of sandwich or surround on this guy so the disruptors don't kill me. That's fair enough. Seems fairly commonplace right now for any player of any race to keep these low, these destructible debris thingies low, but not actually break them down. So Trigger decides to actually break them, creating a wall in the middle, so you have to go around. These can be broken. These can be broken. These can be, I mean, so many things can be broken. But nonetheless, DisK is forced to go around. DisK went into a decent number of stalkers if we're adding on those sentries. He was looking to be a little aggressive. Trigger actually already defending that. The shield battery, 4 units of his own. Could use a force field, yep, to get a stalker. Ooh, barely not, barely not. But yeah, was holding on to that. Hallucination reveals that DisK is expanding, is going into a Twilight Council. For DisK, he knows his opponent is expanding. Doesn't know if his opponent is a Twilight Council, though. And that blink is faster. Trigger did get a faster blink started up. Faster blink, 3 more probes. DisK's aggression opener that wanted to kind of just do a little bit of this and that, like a little tap, 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 was never threatening. Not just because of the rocks being broken down, but because that shield battery was made there. If Trigger had been doing his no scout, I'll put the shield battery in the middle here, he could have been in trouble. As in, he could have lost maybe a sentry or a stalker or a couple of probes or something. But anyways, DisK was kind of behind that last game for a while. In very small quantities. Little probe fall behind there, next a little far behind there, but then at some point actually was ahead in economy and then did fall behind, but then had the higher technology, and it was, you know, just ebb and flow of PvP. So this could look like that. I mean, DisK, as I'm speaking, is actually getting a faster third and is now ahead of probe, so there you go. And with the way that DisK has taken his expansion path, Trigger's aggression that would have looked to actually get another cancel like it did last game on a triangle third has been denied by it. Denied by the expansion path. However, DisK needs to assume that Trigger would check this third base and get over there. No shield out in his third either. Force field, force field, force field's gonna come down. DisK is in a lot of trouble. It's the downside of the base over here. Oh, DisK, he thought his opponent gave up on the aggression. Oh no. Oh no, if he loses the third base, he's supply blocked now too with that pylon going down. Oh, DisK just made a big oopsie. Oh no. Oh, not like this. Not like this. I mean, Trigger doesn't know that he's supply blocked, right? So he's anticipating maybe an Immortal showing up, a couple extra Stalkers showing up. He knows that, you know, technically, he's supposed to be outgunned eventually because he doesn't have rapid reinforcements. He just doesn't know that his opponent was supply blocked. So definitely could have killed that Nexus. I actually think he could have killed that Nexus. Stalkers in the main base, just a distraction. As that Nexus does get finished off on the left, DisK is well and truly behind. No doubt about it this time around. He is in a ton of trouble. He's gonna probably try and be aggressive while getting a third base up. Hope that maybe this Immortal, and his opponent also has an Immortal though. there's actually nothing good I can say about this. He can try and be aggressive with the Stalkers, blink this way and that. But it's not like Trigger is incapable of doing the same thing. They got the same number of Stalkers. They got the same blink. DisK will have a +1 attack upgrade lead for 40 seconds, which is not small, not inconsiderable. But yeah, probably not going to help. And DisK, I guess, well, since he already showed that he was more the Disruptor player last game anyways, I'm just going to say should go ahead and double down on that. He kind of has to play Disruptors. So, yeah. Disruptors, when behind, Disruptor time, right? And there's the Robotics Bay coming down. So again, DisK might have already planned on doing this, just the way that he likes to play out mid and late game PvP. But especially since he's behind, there's no other option. I mean, I guess some people can make a fast, greedy, risky 4th base work. Like, Trigger would have to mess up from that department, though. Like, he'd have to mess up not killing a 4th base that DisK got. So yeah, it's got to be Disruptors. Got to be trying to hole up on 3 bases. Get the Disruptors. Shieldbot Overcharge is going to be focus fire. Did take 3 shots, so, I mean, it repaired a decent amount, but... Immortal goes down from DisK. Trigger has 3 Immortals, a Guardian Shield as well, and DisK certainly will not be able to pull the probes. I mean, he could, but it'd just keep him farther behind, so GG. Yeah, that's kind of painful. If DisK had just... If he had some way to... I guess what you have to do there... I guess you have to send a probe out, I think. I think you have to put a probe on that 3rd base that DisK took, because you got to know if they're going over there. You know, but you can't just default to going over there because they could abuse the same thing if they went to your natural, right? If they saw you hang out the 3rd base, they could go into the natural and get that same force field. So it takes them a little bit longer to get to that 3rd base. It might take them a second to even realize that's what you're doing. But once they do, they can abuse that area if they gun it, you know, if they go for it. And DisK has got to compensate for that next time he tries it. Anyways, GG's. So Trigger will go on to face Spirit in a TV.